My name is Estahlia Agustin Ero Tadak. I am from class 3B. Today I want to explain about challenges among multilingual of English. The first is let's talking about what is multilingualism. Here's the definitions. Multilingualism is the presence of a number of language in one country or community or city. Multilingualism is the use of 3 or more languages, and multilingualism is the ability to speak several languages. In the last sense, multilingualism is widely regarded as a natural state of humankind. This is by Flynn in 2016. So basically, multilingualism is the presence of the language itself, where people in there could speak more than 3 languages. So that is multilingualism. And why multilingualism? Because why multilingualism defined as something that people who could speak more than 3 language, because when people could speak 2 language, people are more common to use the term of bilingual. And the next is what is multilingual speakers. After we're talking about the person of language itself, we want to talk about the person itself, the person who could speak more than 3 language. Multilingual English speakers are those who are able to speak or understand English as well as one or more other languages besides their mother tongue or mother language. They have developed skill in English as a second, third, or fourth language. For the example of these definitions is I am an Indonesian. So my mother tongue or mother language is Indonesia. For example, I could speak Indonesia, I could speak Korean, I could speak Chinese, I could speak English. English is my third language. So that is multilingual speakers, the person who could speak 3 or more language. And let's jump to the main discussions of these presentations, which is about what are the challenges that multilingual speakers would face. There are 5 of the challenges that I want to talk today. The first is the language inference. The first challenge is language inference. Language inference is a challenge for English multilingual speakers because it involves using context clues and making inference about meaning. English learners may find it difficult to infer the intended meaning of a sentence or phrase if they are not familiar with the context, slang, or even the colloquialism used. Furthermore, language inference can be especially challenging for multilingual learners who may not be familiar with the different register and style of language use. It can be hard to make inferences about intended meanings when English isn't the primary language, or when the context is not familiar, or it is unfamiliar. So for the example, if you are talking in English but your mother tongue is Spanish, maybe you will mix your language. At first you were talking in English, but in the end you conclude your speech in Spanish. Or when you are having a conversations with other friends, you use English and you will put some of Spanish words in it. So it could be difficult for multilingual speakers. And the next is difficulty in understanding native speaker speech. So difficulty in understanding native speaker speech is a challenge for English multilingual speaker. Why? Because they may not be used to hearing English spoken by native speakers with different accent, different speed, and also different intonations. Additionally, the multilingual speakers may lack the context and cultural background necessary to understand colloquialism and slang, and making it difficult for them to understand and communicate with the native speaker. And also, native speakers may not be aware with the learners difficult, which is they can lead to miscommunications and also difficult to build the relations between the native speaker and multilingual speaker. It is important for those multilingual speakers to learn and more aware about those limitations when they are talking with native speaker, so it would make them easier to understand what the native speaker said. For the example, I am Indonesian, I have a friend, an Australian. When I'm talking with her, she speaks with Australian English. I have difficulties to understand what she said, not just because the context of the cultural, the slang or colloquialism, but from the pronunciation itself. It is so hard for me to get what she's saying because I'm getting more used to listen my friends who's also an Indonesians talking in English rather than listening to another speaker. So it's also important for multilingual speakers in English to make themselves used to listen to those native speaker. And the next is the grammar. Why grammar is one of the challenge? Because it is very difficult from the grammar of their native language. It's very different. It is difficult if your grammatical in your mother tongue is different with English. For example, in Korea, the structure of the sentence is different with in English. In English, the structure of the sentence is subject, verb, and then object. In Korean, the structure is not like that. That's why the grammar, the simplest structure of the sentence itself will be hard for Korean who also could speak and understand English. And it also could be difficult for multilingual to memorize and apply grammar rules that are different from those of their mother language. Additionally, the grammar of English can vary considerably depending on register and the context. That's why learning English is not that simple. You need to understand the context itself, not just remembering, but you need to understand the context, the use of that grammar. And it is also could be challenging for learners to apply the correct grammar rules at all time. That is what I'm talking before, which is the grammar. The grammar is have their own context, has their own meaning. For example, when you use past tense, present tense, future tense, and something like that. And furthermore, there are many exceptions and complexities to grammar rules that can be challenging for learners, especially when they are not familiar with the language's syntax. And the next is difficulty in pronunciation. Why pronunciation is also one of the challenge. Of course, I've already mentioned it before in the point number 2, difficulty in understanding native speaker speech. I already mentioned a little about the pronunciations, accents, something like that, and now we're gonna talk in the point of view of the multilingual itself. A multilingual have difficulties in pronunciations because it could be difficult to learn and apply a new set of sounds they may not exist in their native language or previous languages. For example, you are a Sundanese, you are learning English. There is a sound in English, v, which is not common in Sundanese. That could be a challenge for the multilingual. And non-native pronunciations and accent can make it difficult for learners to understand native speaker speech, and also can pose a challenge, which is the communications will not be effective. So I already talked about this also before in the second point, which is the accent itself. When you are trying to speak in English, you need also learn about the accent itself. For example, the people who's from India, the mother tongue is India, and then you are trying to learn English. The English from that Indian person would be hard to understand by a native speaker, and also applied when a native speaker. When the Indian person talking with the native speaker, the Indian person would be difficult to understand what the native speaker said. So, and the last point is the culture. And the difficulty in pronunciations also might be difficult because of the speed, the rhythm, and the intonations of English. If you learn further in English, there is also rhythm, pitch, and also the junctions that you need to pay attention when you are learning English. And the last is cultural context. Cultural context can be challenging for English multilingual speakers because words, phrase, and idioms can be different or even have opposite meanings in a different culture. Maybe in English, a word would mean something, and in other words, in English, this word could be mean good things. In other language, this means could be means bad things. So that's why you need to learn about the cultural context of the language that you are learning as a multilingual speakers. This can lead to confusion and miscommunications if the learners or the multilingual speakers are not aware with the cultural context in which they are communicating. In addition, cultural context can influence vocabulary and language learning. The multilingual speakers could pick a lot of new vocabulary, new words, and also new knowledge about that culture. And also, it is very important for those multilingual speakers to understand about the cultural context to avoid any cultural folks when they are speaking in English, and also it could improving their communication skills. Can you imagine when you are talking with a native speaker but you mistranslating that words because you are not aware with the cultural context of that language? So that is why it is being one of the challenge in among multilingual speakers of English. So that's the end of my presentations. Let me conclude. So for the conclusions, multilingualism and multilingual speakers has challenges. But the first, multilingual speakers is a person who could speak three or more language. And in this presentations, challenges among multilingual speakers of English, there is have 5 points. The first is language inference. The next is difficulty in understanding the speakers. The third is grammar. The fourth is the difficulty in pronunciations. And lastly, the cultural context. These aspects really important for multilingual English speakers to pay attention to make their speaking, to make their communication with the speaker more effective. So that's all from my presentations. I'm so sorry if there's any mistakes that I made, if the language that I use is not that good, and also I hope you guys can understand what I'm presenting, and hope these presentations can give you a beneficial and new knowledge. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.